Доброго дня, шановні журналісти.
Good afternoon, dear journalists. Firstly, I would like to express condolences to the relatives and loved ones. This is a great tragedy, and we hope that this case will be investigated and we will find out who is to blame in this terrible tragedy. And maybe your work as journalists, your work is very important, and you really help. You are fourth power in our state. You help us. You help this country. That's why we will help you and protect you. But this is a terrible tragedy for all of us. But we gathered here because of more positive reason. We wanted to tell you about the reforms that we carry out in the ministry that we started last year, the reform of state enterprises. And we should understand that these reforms not only draft laws and regulations, but they are real steps of implementation to increase the profit of state enterprises, fighting corruption that plagued state sector, to increase effectiveness and to increase economic potential of our country. Maybe you saw these figures, but I will go back and I will tell that the portfolio of state enterprises is about 1,500, and some of them are in the state of liquidation. Sometimes takes tens of years. The overall profit was 442 billion. Top 100, 332 billion. So we would like to draw attention to this information. These are the biggest assets of the state that generate income and financial results. And primarily we pay attention to these enterprises. If we look at top 100 of our state enterprises and their assets, so these are 75% of all assets and 33% of all assets. This is Naftogaz, and top 5 is 75%. So if we deal with these enterprises properly, we will have transparent asset management of about 85% of all state enterprises. So if we look at sectors, what assets are owned by the state? 39% is oil and gas sector, then Ukrzaliznytsia, that is 23%, Energoatom, the PZKU, and Ukrgidroenergo. So the majority of assets are at these biggest enterprises. Also, the results of our active attention and those changes that were introduced starting 2015 in the management of state enterprises. So in 2014, the total losses of top 100 enterprises was 119 billion. And as of results of 2015, these losses decreased 3 times and is only 42.6 billion hryvnias. So the losses reduced and the expenses increased. So our losses reduced to 56, and the expenses and profits increased. So 13.8. This is in profit of these enterprises that can be directed to modernization and development of these enterprises, and to increase assets and to develop enterprises. As to areas, if we look at profitable enterprises, the majority is electricity and chemical industry, and among those who lose, the biggest losses in 2015 is oil and gas and Naftogaz company that in 2015 was not profitable and had losses. So we expect changes in 2016. So the most losses were accrued by Naftogaz Ukraine, 25 billion, and Ukrzaliznytsia 16.8. The U3, Regionalny Electrical Network 2, and the most profitable was Ampu, Turboatom, Energoatom, Ukrgidroenergo. If we look at the dynamics of what changes in this company during the last 2 years, so the positive result was in Naftogaz. Their loss reduced 65 billion, Energoatom 7.7 billion. Also, Ampu and Ukrenergo and Turboatom also improved, and the situation decreased in a regional electric network. This is connected with the fact that a part of the activity of this company and assets of the company, they are under in the territories of in the temporarily occupied territories in the EU area. Also, Ukrzaliznytsia decreased its results in the Ukregilya and Agrarny Fund. So these money of net profit got by our enterprises in 2015, they transformed in 2015 and 2.5 dividends that these companies paid to the budget, and 6 billion as part of net profit they paid to the budget. And in this way, all this financial result transformed into the profit of the budget. So further steps in order to increase transparency of corporate governance, and it results in the increase of financial results. These are audits and disclosure of information. And last month, Supreme Council adopted and the President signed the changes in the management of state enterprises legislation. And now state enterprises are obliged to publish the majority of the information, and they should conduct audits, and the results of these audits they should publish at their sites. Also, they are obliged to publish on the site the activity, heads of enterprises, key contracts they concluded, including using the funds of budget, and our project on public finances helps us in this. All these enterprises publish such contracts. And what is important is the appointment of supervisory councils. And now the ministry prepared the order how these supervisory councils will be appointed. And there will be the representatives of the ministry. And also we expect that till the end of the year, there will be 15 enterprises with formed councils, and there will be independent supervisors, people who are not connected with the activity of enterprise, people who have extended experience and professional moral qualities that give them the opportunity to enter these councils. What also is important,
what is important about these boards and how the governance system will be changed. By now, the board members voted in line with directives that they received from above. While now, from now, they will vote in the interests of the company. Thus, we separate direct impact of the government and prevent it from influence on the management of the governance of these companies. Also, we continue to change managers in major state companies. I would like to review this in more detail. The 45 biggest state companies which have to carry out internal, external audit with involvement of biggest world audit firms. They had already held this audit and published the results. They never did this audit, and many of them never had this audit, and especially 18 of them. And by the new year, we expect them to publish the results of this audit. 14 companies had published these audits because they involve borrowings from international donors. Some companies are not operational and are in the process of bankruptcy, and those companies which have delays with the finalization of the audit, we will take disciplinary measures. So the essence of the reform is as follows: that part of the board will be elected independently from any political forces, and another obligatory condition is high criteria set for the board members. Currently, we are very much preoccupied with the reforming of Naftagaz board. As of now, we have 3 UK citizens and 2 representatives of the state in the Naftagaz board. This is the first example how the board should be shaped in the biggest state companies. So we have independent members, UK citizens, and 2 Ukrainian representatives. So at least in 10 companies by the end, state companies, by the end of the year, we will have new boards. The nomination committee had 3 sessions during this year already, but unfortunately it failed to agree on the short list of the nominees to the new positions. So Ukrenergo, we have agreed on Ukrenergo. Yesterday we approved criteria for candidate in Mariupol. Support. Next week we announce competition for the vacancy in Electra Tashmash. Actually, here we compete for the best candidates in the market. Unfortunately, the candidate for whom we voted had received better proposal, better offer from private business. This example shows that looking for good managers and professional managers, we compete with business sector, and we are less competitive than business in this area. We are competitive in terms of salaries, and thus we can involve those people who are able to take responsibility about thousands of people and huge amounts of money, and to get fair remuneration for this. On the other hand, we have implemented a strong KPI and thus to stack with the legislative requirements. We have launched for the second time the competition about CO on Borispil Airport. There we have representatives of international donors and organizations. They voted against the candidate who was offered by the state party, and so as of today we have 5 open competitions to fill in CO positions. We involved recruiting agencies and look for professional people who are able to develop the strategy for this company development. We look for crisis managers who are able to deal with this very problematic state assets. I believe that by autumn the competitions will be over and we will have decent candidates to be appointed. We received many questions why we do not publish all the lists of the candidates, why we do not publish the short lists, etc. That's normal standard practice. Neither of candidates who applies for the position are happy to have their names published because looking for new job candidates do not wish that their employers know that they are looking for new jobs. Especially this is true about those people who work for big international companies. Because all the companies which we where we opened CO vacancies, Mariupol, Seaport, Elektrovazhmash, Borispil Airport, etc. These are all the assets that are a big challenge for the candidates. We do not wish to hinder the entire procedure, the entire process with the excessive disclosure of information. That's it, and I would like to add that we managed to approve financial plans for all state enterprises. We expect that the financial deficit or losses for some companies will be much less than the previous year. And we expect to get a profit up to 20 billion hryvnia from all those state companies. Only 2 companies are expected to become deficient, while even Naftogaz should become profitable, and the state would get dividends from this company. That is, we wanted to describe, our first successes. So I believe that the main advantage and the main positive result is increasing of the budget revenues. From July 1st, all state enterprises are purchasing and all the goods and having public procurement via Prozora system, and we encourage you to report about all the cases of corruption and non-transparent procurements. I would like to show slide number 1, where we showed the number of state enterprises. The state cannot be efficient owner of 1,800 of state companies. These state companies, state enterprises, could be rather small, from one building to up to huge companies. We have some companies have just between 60 and 140 employees, and the state cannot efficiently manage these enterprises. In the EU countries, in the United States, they do not have such a huge number of state enterprises. Together with the State Property Fund, we have prepared a plan how to privatize the small state enterprises, which could become a basis for development of small and medium-sized businesses. In September, when new session of the Parliament will start, I hope they will support this law, they will pass this law. Unless this law is passed in the Verkhovna Rada, we can do nothing in this area. Unfortunately, the draft law remains in the Parliament for a year already, and I hope that it will be voted soon, which will unblock this privatization process. Thank you. Let us shift to our Q&A session. Please represent yourself. Dmitro Shkov. About international financial orders, there is a resolution number 390 of the Cabinet of Ministers, and in March you encouraged state enterprises to start the procedure, but recently Director General of Ukrposhta suspended conclusion of the contract with international auditor. As far as I know, in Ukrposhta, it was not about the audit itself, but about the period of the audit. So as far as I know, the auditor requested for longer period, for 2-year period, which enables the auditor to confirm about the entry balance, and now they plan to have a new tender for the audit designed for longer period, for 2 years, not just for 1 year, but 2 years. Олена Калачова, Економічна правда. The last year dividends from the state year were mentioned as one of the sources to fill in the state budget as a source of revenues. Could you develop more about the situation with the revenues as of now? And you mentioned that you expect this results to be better this year. All state enterprises pay 2 types of payments, fees to the budget. These are either dividends or part of their income. As of now, they have to pay 85% of their income. As of today, we have 2.4 billion hryvnia paid as dividends. This year, we expect that this figure will be 20% higher this year. The question was not heard by the interpreters. The devaluation of hryvnia influenced the assets of state companies because the borrowings were made in currency, in dollars. When national currency stabilized, the losses now will become lesser. Also, the liberalization of tariffs, sharp liberalization of tariffs, which had to be done during 20 years. On the other hand, the state enterprises, due to the fair tariffs, become more profitable. Naftogaz, Ukrenergo, Ukrzaliznytsia remained deficient for many years because the tariffs were artificially cut down. On the other hand, they have to optimize their costs, like, for example, optimize the managerial staff. Now they have to bring their operations in line with the, for example, business sector. On the other hand, the procurement, which became more transparent, allowed to save money for purchases of services. We will have the same amount of goods and services purchased for state companies, but for less price. Also, we optimize the business processes. We introduce IT technologies and optimize management inside the companies. Natalia Kochor, Источник web portal. What part out of that top 100 enterprises are seaports? And the seaport employees say that 75% of income are removed from the enterprises. The seaports are in top 10, and the decision of the government about directing 75% of income to the state is equal for all state companies, Ukrposhta, Energatam, etc., and for seaports too. As for that high percentage, as the Ministry of Economy, we also had some concerns about this high level of deductions, but on the other hand, as of today, our state enterprises have access to cheap credit resources, which allow cheap modernization of those enterprises, but they have to become transparent and to have investment plan understandable for international investors. In order to prepare good investment project and to start negotiations with foreign banks, we need to carry out big work inside the company, because our state managers got accustomed to allocations from the national budget given by the government, and thus we have to optimize the companies first and make them transparent and prepare good investment plans, and only afterwards go to the international investors. This year, for the first time, international donors invested into Naftagaz, and now EBRD credit limit for NAK Naftagaz was rather big. The company had used this money and paid it back already. So we have some state companies which comply with all the requirements of international donors. So the dividend policy is not the biggest issue for investors. The biggest issue for investors is non-transparency and unreadiness of our companies. For the questions, Katerina Mishenkova, Focus Magazine. You described privatization. What my question is, what enterprises were privatized last year, and what happened to the privatization of Odessa sea plant? During, if I'm not mistaken, during the first 6 months of this year, the Income from privatization amounted to 48 million hryvnia. We have big portfolio of small and medium-sized enterprises, and we have to speed it up. As for privatization of the OSP, the head of the State Property Fund explained this in many detail. One of the reasons was that the price, the initial price, was too high, taking into account the risks of the crisis and the trends in the ammonium market. And investors were not ready to bear the risks existing in OSP. The risks of the previous buyer, the debt to the ODF group, which is in the international arbitration now, the limitations as to the outflow of capital, the limitations as to the withdrawal of dividends, etc. The obligatory sale of currency, which are limitations of the NBU, etc. But we expect that by the end of the year, the new contest will be announced, and we hope it will be successful. Defense Express, Vladimir Zablotsky. After Warsaw Summit, much was said about PPP. Whether you plan any steps in this area, maybe privatization of some inefficient enterprises in Oboronprom. When we speak about involvement of investments, we speak about private investments, we speak about privatization and about PPP. PPP remains underdeveloped in our country. One of the most understandable form of PPP for us is concession. And currently our ministry, jointly with the international donors, with some other interested stakeholders, tries to develop proper legislation. We have many potential objects for PPP, like roads, like heating systems, waste management objects, the defense area. These are the projects which potentially could be implemented as PPP in a form of concessions. By October, we plan to submit the draft law on this matter. This also means that we have to compile the list of objects which are prohibited for private. We have the list of objects which are prohibited for privatization and concessions, and this will remove the ban from the seaports infrastructure and from the roads. With the Ministry of Culture, we discuss PPPs about cultural objects, about castles, museums, where we have investors ready to develop tourist infrastructure, services infrastructure. So we have some projects here.
And in fact, Ukraine, tell us please about the top 100, how the credit indebtedness changed, and what they should repay till the end of the year, and what is the is this indebtedness will be prolonged? So there is no such, because they prolong the contracts, and what happened during last 10 years, the enterprises, especially infrastructure institutions, they had direct funds from the state, and the rest of the enterprises were financed their losses through credits, and the maturity of credits were the credits from the state banks. And now we have more than 60 billion credit portfolio of large state enterprises and state banks. And part of this portfolio was partly financing of losses of these state enterprises, and now these enterprises are at the level of profitability, and we reduce credit portfolios, and part of credit portfolios from international institutions as usual in foreign currency, and they are guaranteed by the state, and the rate is not high. So there is no problem with the servicing of such debts, and part of these debts are restructured, and several of them are at the stage of restructuring. And the faster the enterprise reaches profitability level, the more opportunities they have to reduce this credit portfolio. And when the plans were adopted by state enterprises, we pay attention while considering these statements. These credit portfolios are reviewed, and there are tens of billions of credit in credit portfolios, and it influences final results and dividends of these enterprises. And we expect this here, if I'm not mistaken, about 5% of reduction of such credit portfolio. Any more questions? Please. Good afternoon. Levchenko Simen, Час Руху. I have two questions to you. The first one, for example, the state takes 75% of taxes that from dividends, and 75% of net profit of state enterprises. And our state provides the opportunity to take credits, and taking into account that the state gets the net profit or dividends, but and how can these enterprises give these credits back with an interest rate? And when will be the second stage of selling Odessa port enterprise? And do you know about the price for this enterprise? Because you said that investors did not appear at the auction because the price, the starting price was increased. Decreased or increased? Because there are many discussions on this by many political forces as to credits and net profit. I already answered this question. So the source of investment in the company is amortization also, and Ukrzaliznytsia, that is a corporate company, Ukrgaz, Ukrenergo, they provided the real value of their assets, and the part of amortization they reinvest it, and this is a big amount. Also, the companies have the opportunity to get credits, and they can pay these credits with their profits. So why credit financing is needed now? We as a state and as a company, we share the assessment of risks of these companies, and these projects, they were not estimated according to their cost, and the procedure was not transparent, and it was a corruption mechanism. They spent a lot. They bought many things through non-transparent procedures, and they tried to get income from this. And when these projects are financed by the National Bank, each company is assessed, each project is assessed, and the companies become more transparent. And if you look at the structure of the capital of the most private companies, only 30% they are invested by their own funds, and 70% are financed by the outside financing. So as to Odessa City Port, the contest will be in autumn. The price will be established according to the new estimate, and I believe that we will all learn lessons from the situation that happened during this contest. So this is the end of press briefing. Thank you and goodbye.